Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I will be asking questions of both of you. You will both have the opportunity to answer all the questions that are asked of you. And I think we can all agree, though, over the last 18 months, we've had far too much togetherness, happiness, and friendliness, understanding of other people's point of view in this country. What this country needs right now is some sharp disagreement and partisan debates. So gentlemen, feel free to throw some elbows over the next 30 minutes or so. There will also be an opportunity for some of the boxing media here present to ask some questions. But first of all, I would like to give both of you an opportunity to make an opening statement about this upcoming fight. John David Jackson, why don't we start with you?
All right, thank you very much. It's nice to have the press out here, and I'm glad you made it out. The Sergey Kovalev-Andre Ward fight is a fight that I'm glad that it was made for a lot of reasons, but one reason is for the fans, because this fight was deserved. You know, in boxing today, there are far too many fights that aren't being made. These are some of the best fighters in the world. So when this fight was made, it definitely has two of the best pound-for-pound fighters today going against one another at the peaks of their career, basically. And for that, I'm very happy, because they're both very, very, very well-schooled fighters. Andre did what he was supposed to at 168 and clean the division out the way he was supposed to. Now it's time to move up and made a new challenge. Sergey Kovalev has tried to fight everybody within his division that he could. Some guys have avoided him, but he's done what he's supposed to do and clean out his division. So the fact that the two fighters are meeting now, the fans deserve this type of fight, and I'm glad that it was made.
Thank you, John. Virgil.
Also, glad to be here today. I think this must be a first trainer debate, so to be in a historical initiation, I guess, if it continues, that's cool in itself. I think Coach Jackson covered it all about the significance of the fight, so I won't have to go into all of that, but glad to be here.
All right, the first question I'd like to ask you both. I think it's fair to say that maybe neither of you was entirely thrilled with the way your charge looked last time out. Maybe it wasn't the best performance for either Andre or for Sergey. Virgil, I'd like to ask you, what did you think about how Sergey Kovalev looked against Isaac Chilemba?
Well, I didn't watch the fight until after our last fight. I didn't take much from it because that's boxing. Isaac Chilemba is not what I consider a mediocre or average fighter. He's right there in the top 5, top 6 at B. So all you can do is just take him at their word that, you know, he went back home. He had a lot of people tugging on him. He had a lot of things that he had to cover. He probably had some distractions, but me personally, I can't pick out anything that would say he needed to look a certain way. I mean, if he has to look a certain way every fight and knock out everybody within 5 rounds in every fight, he's got a lot of pressure on him. So I didn't take much from it other than watching the fight.
And John David Jackson, I think it is fair to say Sergey did have a lot of distractions fighting back in Russia. It was difficult. He changed up his training camp maybe in a way that you would not have liked. Has he learned from that going into this fight?
I think the Chilemba fight was a blessing in disguise for Sergey. Like Virgil alluded to earlier, you know, it wasn't his best fight, but you know, sometimes fighters don't get up for certain fights, and they might overlook their opponent, looking at the next opponent, who's even way better. You know, on the other hand, Chilemba, that was like his lottery, and he definitely got it for it. He did the best he could. He got the best he can get in. Sergey had too many distractions. Friends, family, everybody wanting tickets, trying to promote the fight. But he learned from that mistake. And he realizes going into this fight here, the stakes are way higher. The opponent's more dangerous, has greater ring generalship, undefeated, hasn't tasted defeat in years. And he knew that the things that we did last camp, he couldn't do this camp. He could just be better around, all prepared. And luckily for him, he learned from that fight. And he needed that kind of fight to make sure that he doesn't have those pitfalls and fall into them this particular fight here.
And similarly, was there anything that you took away from Andre's fight with Alexander Brand, or again, looking at the entirety of Andre's career, was that fight, you feel, something of an anomaly?
I can't take anything away that would give me a sense of security for this fight here. Because once again, like Virgil alluded to, it's not that speed of a fight was a fight for rounds to get some of the rust off of him, to make him hone his skills a lot better for this fight here. Was it the same kind of opponent? No. But it did one thing for him that he needed. He needed that ring work. You know, did he try for a knockout? I don't know. That's his man, that's his game plan. I can't speak for them. I just know he did what he was supposed to do. He won the fight convincingly, he dominated, maybe he didn't get a knockout. But listen, that's not his strong suit. He's a tremendously talented, well-schooled fighter. And that's what Virgil's done. So I think, like I said, I can't speak for them, but they're happy with the win. That's what they needed. They got what they needed to get through this fight here. Did he look the best he could have? That's not for me to say, but you know, he did what he was supposed to do and he won, and that's the bottom line.
I wanted to follow on from that. I know that part of the negotiations with making this fight were that both guys had interim fights. You said you were ready to go a year or so ago. Andre said to me yesterday, you guys are going to regret the fact that Andre Ward had the opportunity to have those interim fights. Are you guys going to regret the fact that Andre Ward has had those interim fights?
Listen, that's the fighter, what he feels in his heart, and that's what he says. Okay, I can live with that. The fact that he had a fight sits well for them. But the fact that the opponent that he had was not really a world-class caliber opponent. He's good, and but he was what he was. He was an opponent that was going to get the ring rust out of him for this upcoming fight. So, do I regret that he had that fight? No. He needed that fight, and it's good that he had that. But he's not the fighter that Andre is fighting this coming Saturday. He's a totally different fighter. So, while it worked for him in his favor to get the ring rust off, and he needed that, he's going into this fight and fighting someone totally different. Brand didn't get him ready for that type of opponent, but he got what they needed for that night. And that's all that counts for them. So I highly doubt that our side will be having sorrows for him getting the ring rust off. He needed that, and that's going to serve him well for this fight. You know, the better man will win. That's all I can say.
Virgil, how much did Andre need to have these last couple of fights that he's had this year in order to get himself into a position to fight Sergey?
Well, being the fact that he had been laid off for a while, the rounds were very important. I have to agree, Coach Jackson, about the rounds. He wasn't under any pressure other than to get the rounds in. It does need to be noted that Brand was not our choice. He was our last choice. We had a week to make a decision or lose the date. But we went through 3 top 10 light heavyweight contenders, and they all turned the fight down. So Brand came and stepped up, and we're glad that he did. He accommodated us. I don't think preparing for a fight you need a certain type of opponent. You can do that preparing for the fight in the gym. You can get 4 sparring partners and get more success out of preparing for somebody than you can a particular opponent, because you can't predict how that opponent is going to show up that night. But during the time of a training camp, you can pretty much get what you want because you have a selection. So as far as preparing for this fight, it's like we always said, we've been preparing for it from the first time he started boxing.
Andre won both of his fights this year comfortably, against Brandon, against Sullivan Barrera. But there are times where he didn't look like Andre. He looked a little bit more, there was less fleet of foot about him. He looked at times like he was trying to go for a one-punch knockout. Not everyone was entirely impressed with the way he looked in either of those fights. John David Jackson thinks that Andre Ward is a fighter in decline. What do you say?
Well, you know what? Each fight is different, and when you have the masses, so to speak, the critics who need to be impressed by a certain way of victory comes up, that's okay. But the bottom line is, if he looked bad and still won every round, I'll take that. I think we have to remember that we came out of the garage and fought Barrera, who was #1 contender at the time, with a 1.5-year layoff. So It was a dangerous fight until the fight was over. Then Barrera was garbage. You see, Paul Smith fought Abraham toe-to-toe, but he didn't fight us toe-to-toe. So again, you minimize the opponent. So that's just the nature of the game, and we don't pay too much to that because if you understand the game, nobody's ever going to be satisfied, so you have to be satisfied within yourself. As far as a decline, I mean, if he's on the outside looking in at these particular fights and if he's expecting to see something that he saw before and didn't see it, then that's what he chose. He chose to say he was on the decline, but there's a lot more that goes into that.
John David Jackson, anything you want to add to that?
Listen, when I say decline, I say it for a lot of different reasons. The decline that I say is when you look at these past 5 years, what he's done, the way he dominated 168. Like Virgil said, there's certain ways he fights certain fights. He did different things differently. But to watch it, and you watch it carefully, and maybe for a particular reason, that Virgil maybe have done something to change it, but he doesn't do the things that he once did when he was dominating 168. He still does things well, and he does certain things, but it's not the way it once was. And listen, we all go through that in life. We're not the same as we were 5 years ago. So it's not like I'm trying to say it in a bad way. I'm just being honest with what I see. Like he said, from my vision, what I see. They may not see the same thing. I just see, and on the flip side, you can say that Sterling is on the decline. He's 33. His prime is there too. But he's a puncher. He's not a boxer. He doesn't use his legs as much. He doesn't have to. He has to be smart, cut the ring off, use his legs to do different things to make the fight easier for him. So when I say I see the decline in Andre, I see certain things. But you know what? On that night, they may not show it. He may do something totally different. We have to be prepared for whatever he brings to us. So what I may see may not materialize come fight night. So we have to be prepared for different things. But I just say that because that's what I see. It's a slow decline. It's not fast. It's not rapid. All boxers go through it. If you've been around boxing, you understand the game. It happens to every fighter eventually. His is a slow decline. I'm not saying he got old all of a sudden, he's going to lose his fight because he got old. He's far from that. He's still in the prime of his life, he's doing things well. It's just some things that I see and I've watched, he doesn't do it quite well or the way he did before 5 years ago. And that's all I mean by that. You take it the way you want to. It's just what I see. I'm entitled to give my opinion in the sport. And that's just what I see. They can't take it bad, anybody, unless they want to. Just what I see.